Right. So the next step that we're going to take care of in this is getting the main power supply, the power source, which is going to be it's going to be this plug. This is like, I think, 100 feet of cable. I'm going to set the camera down for a second. All right. So you can see the end that I accidentally cut with my hedge clipper wasn't very long at all. It's almost at the tail end. I kind of wish that I had cut a little more in the middle, but who knew I would be repurposing this cable. So this is the cut end. You've got a green wire, which is typically ground. You've got a white and a black. White is usually neutral, and black would be your power. And then way on the other end down here, you've got your plug. Right there. So this would plug into the wall, provide power, wire this up into here, and then we're going to connect our light switch in with these cables. And then also our other power supply cord is going to go from here to the actual light. So what I'm just going to do, I've already got this end exposed. I can worry about untangling everything from the other end later. And I know this is a crazy big excess. It's just because I don't want to cut another power cord, which is why I'm using this one. And I'll just wrap up whatever's not needed on this and get it out of the way when we're doing our reveal. So I'm going to just take a blade, a box cutter blade, and I'm going to cut the sleeve of this cable. I'll probably cut it down to, I don't know, maybe about there. And then I'm going to make sure I've got a good clean cut on the wires. Obviously this one's mangled up. Good clean cut on the wires, then we're going to strip them. We'll strip these wires off. So this is what we have with the sleeve cut down. And I took a pair of dikes here and just snip the ends, get them clean. So in figuring out the best way to strip this, you can use another blade. If you've got wire strippers, that's probably the best way. Let's see if I can kind of prop my camera up and show you. If you don't know what gauge wire you're working with, hopefully this can kind of focus. Try to focus it for you. Maybe. So if you take your wire strippers and you look through the hole, the only thing you want to see is wire on the other end. So it's looking like this is 14 to 16 gauge. So I'm going to go ahead and take my 14 to 16 gauge. I'm going to come down a little bit on it. Right about there. Crimp down. And then pull. We'll do that with each one. And then I'll show you how we route it into the box. All right, we got everything stripped off. Now in your box, you've got a couple different areas that you can route this wire into. If you see on the top, there's a hole there, there's a hole here, and there's a hole right under here. So depending on the best method for you is where you can punch these holes out. I think what I'm going to do is come in through the bottom, because I'm going to route this down and drill a hole. I could route it down and drill through all here, but that's a lot more drilling. I think I'm just going to drill a hole here and then just kind of have the cables come out. So You can take a flat blade screwdriver, anything to kind of punch this hole, and just use a hammer, tack it up, pop it through, and then on the other side take some pliers and just kind of move it, work it off, twist it, and it should pull. So what I've done is I've popped this through the outlet box, and I've got everything pretty much ready to go as far as this cable is concerned. So now we're going to take 14 gauge 14 gauge electrical cable, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to strip off the sheathing here, and then I'll show you kind of how we match this up. So this is going to be the light switch that we're going to use. Okay, you're going to need to make sure that you have wire nuts, and there's kind of various sizes. You can look and see. It's kind of common sense. If you've got 14 gauge cable, you can see how big that is, how thick that is, and then you've got, you know, a certain diameter hole in there. You've got to be able to fit 2, sometimes 3 inside of there. So just kind of look and see what the appropriate size is. And I'm going to be using these yellow ones. I think I'll probably need 2. So I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so here you have both of the cables. You got your light cable that's going to go from the box to the light switch where the bulb plugs in, and then this is coming from your power from the extension cord from the outlet. So how to route these together, how to tie these together, what is what. I kind of talked about this a little earlier. Green is ground, white is neutral, black is hot or power. Same here, white is neutral, black is hot or power, and the bare is going to be the ground. So what we're going to do is we're going to wire nut the neutrals together, and those are just going to be off on their own. We're going to wire nut the grounds together, and we're going to tie in this jumper. Okay? This jumper is going to run from the wire nut of the 2 grounds, and we're going to tie that into the ground outlet right here on the receptacle on the light switch. So we're going to have black from the extension cord, black from the light source, and then we're going to have our jumper cable from the ground. And something that you should keep in mind whenever you're using kind of a braided strand where there's multiple strands of cable, twist it to the right. You want to make sure these are all twisted to the right so that they're uniform, but also when you're wire nutting these, if you had it twisted to the left and then you wire nut, you're going against it, so you're actually unwinding what you just twisted. So you want these to be twisted in the same direction that you're going to be wire nutting. And then the other thing you want to keep in mind, as you turn a screw to the right, you're tightening it. So you're tightening these down. These act as clamps. So you want to wind the cable. I'm going to see if I can do this with holding the camera in 2 hands. So for instance, this is one of our hot cables. Just take some needle nose pliers, and you're going to kind of crimp them down in the direction you're going to turn it. So that way when you actually put this on, as you tighten down this screw, you're going to keep, if this cable does turn, if this wire does turn, it's going to turn in the direction that it's tightening instead of unwinding. So you get a better connection point. So I'm going to go ahead and wire this up and show you what the finished product looks like. So we got everything hooked up. Again, we've got green as the ground. We've got the bare as the ground. And then this just happens to be a white wire that I had, 14 gauge, and I'm using it as a jumper. And I tied that into the ground screw right on the switch. And then our neutrals are tied together over here, and our hots. And we got each of those ran. So if you wanted to test this, this is the switch that I'm actually lighting up here. And all you need to do, if you wanted to test this, is take your neutral, take your hot. Your hot is going to go on the brass screw, and then your white is going to go on the silver screw. And I'm going to see if I can prop this up just for a minute. Just so I can get this tied down here. All right, and then all you need to do is plug it in. It's kind of hard to see in the video. This is the blue light. Flip our switch. Off. On. Off. So we know that everything is wired up correctly, so we can go ahead and kind of fold these wires in to the box, and then we're going to push this receptacle in, and these screws here are going to screw in to these holes right here. And then I'll show you what the next step is. I went ahead and threw on the cover plate. Just behind these screws, there's two little holes right on the switch there. Let me see if I've got another switch I can show you what I'm talking about. I know most of you probably know this. So these were the mounting screws that I just talked about in the last clip. And then these tiny little holes here, those are where the cover plate screws into. And when you're tightening these down, make sure not to tighten too tight. If you tighten plastic too much, it's going to crack. But you can see here, the outlet, or the light switch comes right up to the cover plate. It's flush, and that's because we got that mounting box completely flush against the drywall. And if we didn't, if that was recessed back, then this switch would be further back inside the cavity. So what we might do as the next step, I'm probably going to start to move on to the pumpkin over there. I think to just kind of spruce this up a little bit. I mean, we could do it just like this, and it's a functional wall. But if you really wanted to get kind of fancy with this, you could take joint compound, drywall mud, spackle, and just kind of take a putty knife, flush those edges, just kind of run putty in there and then flatten it out. And then sand that down. You might need to do it again. You could paint this wall. I've thought about maybe putting my boy's name here. Or some kind of a message that just kind of correlates with the gender reveal. And then you could get trim board and, you know, kind of cover this up, or use a cloth or whatever. But as far as the functionality of this, it's completely functional. Does exactly what we need it to do right now. The back side, this is it's an electrical connection, and you really should be using a clamp. Let me move this out and show you. There's a clamp that you can screw in, and you technically by code should clamp this off, screw it down, and that way this is all tight. This is not going to be a permanent thing. It's not even going to be plugged in all the time. So I'm just going to take electrical tape and I'm going to wrap around all these cables. But when I actually, you know, this is just a temporary, this was what we used to test. I'm going to undo these wires. I'm going to drill a hole in here just as a better way to route these cables. And we're going to just push it down in the board. I might go to Lowe's and pick up another sheet of this drywall, and I wouldn't have to make any cuts on it. I just put it up against here and screw it in, and that'll keep this back cavity covered. So I might do that. But I think the next steps that we're gonna dig into is figuring out this pumpkin. This is more of an arts and crafts project at this point, which is not necessarily my forte, but I can be a little creative, I guess, if I wanted to. So we'll get this figured out, make some cuts on it, and then we'll find the best way to mount our light into the bottom of this. So stay tuned. All right, so on to the pumpkin. I've kind of traced out where I think that the lid should probably be. On a pumpkin this size, you might see it closer to the top, but I want to make sure there's enough room to get a hand down in there, and I don't know how thick these walls are. So I just kind of traced out just a little outline, and I'm going to take a box cutter blade and just check and see what the inside looks like here. Inside of this pumpkin is a solid core of styrofoam. I don't know why I was thinking that this was going to be easy and hollow. Styrofoam's lightweight, and it kind of feels like it should be hollow. But so I thought about taking the hacksaw and cutting through, but then I don't want to recut the lines that I already have. So what I'm going to do is flip this over, and we've got a nice area on the bottom to work with here. And I'm going to try to figure out kind of a spot for this light, because that's going to require me to cut into this, and if I cut into this, I could possibly drill or find another way to dig out some of this on the inside. Maybe make it easier for me. So I'm gonna give that a go. It's always the simple things that are the hardest. So I got a hole in here, and I took my needle nose pliers and just dug it inside and gripped it and ripped it. I think I'm going to go back to the approach up here, find a way to get this top section cut off. I think that's going to give me the best chance to hollow out this the way that I need to. All right, top is off. I decided to take the blade off the hacksaw. That way I wouldn't have 2 points that are starting to kind of mess up my cuts. So I just came in one-sided on this. And styrofoam is so messy. I hate dealing with styrofoam. But this is going to give me an area I can cut this out. The thing that I'm really hoping isn't going to be a mess is whenever we cut out whatever our design is, that there's not going to be pieces of styrofoam crumbling and flying everywhere. But we're going to do the best we can. This might be good enough. I might try to clean up kind of some of the edges on the insides here. But you can see this is the outlet. And once I screw that into the bottom, I think I should be okay. The other thing that I've got to think about here is melting this. I don't think the light gets that hot, but I'm going to try to get a little more area around where the bulb's going to be, clear that out, and then I might, I don't know, line it with something or maybe spray it, and that'll help maybe contain some of the loose particles. But as it is, gosh, I got to figure out which side was, should have marked that. Is that it? There we go. Once we get all this painted orange, I think it'll be okay.